As Kenyans welcomed the new year, they also celebrated the end of 123 days of the elongated electioneering period that so many businesses affected and some were even forced to shut down. Now, away from that, the common monarchy has gone through a topsy-turvy on March's basic commodities, from maize flour to fuel prices to electricity bills, and the list goes on. And it is a question to many consumers who are trying to put their finger on it, on what exactly is going on, and will the different prices of basic commodities ever stabilize? Thankfully, I have with me Tom Okech, who's the chairman of Downtown Consumer Association. Thank you very much for gracing us with your presence.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's dive into it. Now, as a chairman of an association that is out to create a fair, just and safe market for all players in the sectors of Kenya's economy, how do you describe the current economic situation?
The current economic situation is unfair to the common mwananchi. Yeah, many people, or a majority of the people, are seriously struggling to be able to make it, to put food on the table. And this began even towards the end of last year, and there is no respite as of now. Things are still becoming worse. Like right now, the cost of unga or maize flour that was subsidized up to 31st December. Right now, it's shooting. It's going It's going up almost every day.
Yes, it is shooting.
It's not the cost of maize flour, not sugar, not milk, everything. Yeah, that the common mwananchi consumes. The prices are going up.
Okay. Now, before, let me just cut you short. You've just mentioned sugar and maize flour. So we all have realized that there's a sudden trend of increment of prices of basic commodities, such as the unga that you've just mentioned, and which is unga being Kenya's staple food. Now, it's now between 140 shillings to 150 shillings. What role have you, from where you sit, what role have you played in protecting consumers?
Okay, over time, what we have been doing is to reach out to the authorities concerned and make them know or question why such prices are going up. Like now, since the government removed the subsidy, or that was what was planned, up to 31st December. And the reasons that made the subsidies be put in place are not yet over. People are still suffering, people can still not manage. Then why remove it? Since the problem that made it to be put in place still exists. So are we are asking, was it about campaign? Was the government putting that so that they could be able to sail through the elections, then remove it? Then that would be so unfair. People are still suffering. January is even a worse month, and the subsidy should have gone on so that people could be able to get this staple food. Because if unga is increased beyond the means of majority of the citizens, then everybody across the board suffers.
Yes, of course.
And this one, the government is at fault, and we have already written to them. We have spoken to different departments of government, just trying to understand why this subsidy was removed. Okay, the date started to elapse because it had been set at 31st December, but then what are the plans now on that people are still suffering and people need to be supported? So we have asked these questions and we are waiting for answers.
So even from where you sit, you cannot speculate on what type of answers you will get?
Okay. I know the government will say they are considering, or times are tough, but this is something that needs to be done urgently because people eat every day, people want to eat every other time. So it cannot be a long-term plan. And the government has ways. It should be handled like an emergency. Yeah, if there was a flood, then the funds would be gotten to be able to deal with that. So that is the way that they should work with the issue of the maize flour right now. It should be dealt with as an emergency. Get funds from wherever, then be able to subsidize on the cost of maize flour.
All right. The inflation rate of the last quarter of the year 2017 was between 7.9% and 8.4%, which was way above the government's expectation of about 7.5%. So we went way higher to 8.4%, and the government was expecting a 7.5% or the last quarter of the year 2017. Kindly highlight for us the reason behind this raise and this increment in detail.
What our analysis has brought out is that it could be as a result of the elections and the free flow of money around the electioneering period. Yeah, because I think a lot of money was released into the economy. Used to bribe people, as politicians usually do. And this must have contributed to the unexpected high rise of inflation that came about around this time. Yes, because now the trading, like the shilling to the dollar, it kept, the dollar kept going up every other time. So we could attribute it to that kind of, because it has happened before. Around elections, this has happened before. And we do not have details if money, legal money was put into was brought into the economy, but those could be possibilities.
All right.
Yeah.
And having that said, what would you describe the current situation right now after having inflation go as high as 8.4% in December? Now that we're into a new year and we've just had maybe at most 2 weeks and some days. So how would you describe the situation in this 2 weeks of the new year?
The situation
on what is inflation and how the inflation last year has affected it.
Yeah, this has even affected even the prices that are going up right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is as a result of that inflation that was seen towards the end of last year. And this every other trader would wonder, even if it is in the oil industry, if the shilling loses, then they would want to increase so that they keep at par with whatever the cost they had incurred in maybe importing goods. So every other sector would increase their prices. So that is affecting the prices even of goods, of what is happening right now. And it could go on for a bit of time if the government does not come in to bring subsidies, especially on those goods that are used by common mwananchi. Otherwise, some things will continue for some time before it.
Okay, and since you're here, I would like our director, Mr. Director, if you don't mind, I would like us to play once again the prices of commodities in that across the country. We base the commodities, or rather we give the prices out to our viewers in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, the main cities, and even maybe Nakuru. So maybe in just a short while. Now, here are the prices of the different commodities. And Mr. Okech, if you don't mind, kindly break it down to us so that our viewers from all over the country can understand. We have Kisumu, where the price of a 90-kilogram bag of maize is 3,600, and then we have Mombasa, where it's 2,700, and Nairobi, 3,000. For the purpose of clarification, could you just explain the different prices, and would they ever be low, and what would be the best price?
Yeah, as of maize, the 90 kg bag, you can see that Mombasa is the lowest at 2,700.
Yes.
This comes as a result of most imports hit Mombasa first. Yeah, so at that point, before transportation is added into the coast, then they would get it at 2,700. Then Nairobi, most of this comes to Nairobi. You would even find that maize from Kitale would come, most of it would come to Nairobi. Then you'd find Nairobi getting at 3,000. Kisumu is high.
Kisumu, people in Kisumu are suffering.
Yeah, they are suffering because even the maize that is close by in Eldoret and Kitale comes to Nairobi. More of it comes to Nairobi rather than going to Kisumu. So this is why Kisumu has a higher prices for the maize. So then if you look at the beans, it's the same thing, because the beans is cheaper in Mombasa, moderate in Nairobi, and then Kisumu is the highest. But these prices, whether it is 2,700 at Mombasa, they are still very high. These are not the cost that we should be buying 90 kilograms of.
Mr. Director, maybe we could also take a look at the onions and the tomatoes. the quite high prices. And how low do you think they should go? How low should we be buying 90-kilogram bag of maize? Let me speak for myself, from someone who lives in Nairobi.
Yeah, sometime last year it used to be at 2,200, 2,300, and that I think that if that can be retained or it can come back to that, that would be a bit fair.
They're almost at a double.
Yeah.
Right now, potatoes in Nairobi go for 2,400 for a 90-kilogram bag. In Mombasa, we're looking at 2,300 for a 90-kilogram bag, and in Kisumu, finally, 1,800. Kisumu seems to be having it better this time.
Oh, yeah, well, I think now, like, you can see that Mombasa is 2,300, Nairobi is 2,400. Oh, then Kisumu here is 1,800. Maybe this could be as a result of the farming where the potatoes are farmed most, and you will find that even in small plantations in areas in Nyanza and around the place, the Kerichos, then they have the potatoes, and this is why this could be
closer to them.
Yeah, it is closer, and this is why you could find that Kisumu has a lower price for potatoes.
As opposed to tomatoes, where a box of tomatoes goes for 5,000 in Nairobi, Mombasa goes for 4,000, and Kisumu 5,000. As opposed to that, they're having it better in when it comes to potatoes in Kisumu. And with that in mind, Mr. Ketch, are there policies? Because you have clearly stated that when it comes to maize, a 90-kilogram bag should go as low as 2,000?
200, that's what I was saying.
2,200, yes.
Or even below, because at the time, let's say when the Jubilee government came into power, they had proposed even farming in large scale. You remember the Kulalu farming. And it had been thought that we could even have these prices coming below 2,000. Yeah, but now this, most of these things have not worked, and farmers also have not been assisted to the level that they are able to produce. Yeah, to the level that what they produce can be enough for consumption around here.
Okay. Yeah. Now, with that said, are there policies that the stakeholders and the government should be following to provide these commodities that they are not following, or rather, and at the end of the day, the consumers end up suffering? Are there policies that are being followed that are not, then people are not obeying the rules?
There are policies around food security. Yeah, and but they are not being followed to the letter. And some of these, and you would even hear politicians speaking about them during campaigns, that we are going to implement this, that like the subsidies to the farmers. Yeah, those are some things which should happen. But if you move to look at, the government would say that the assisted farmers do this and that. But if you move to the ground and try to find out exactly which farmers were assisted, and to what extent they were assisted. Most farmers are complaining. So then you wonder where these subsidies or the support that the government is saying they supported the farmers went to. So this corruption at that level creates this problem, because now when it comes to harvesting time, then we are not able to harvest crops that can suffice the demand of the market. So the policies, especially around farming, farmers, farm products, and farm implements and equipment, if they are not available and well enough, because you even go to places like you can find one tractor that has been put in place by the county government, being used to do like 100 farmers are waiting, the small-scale farmers are waiting for the same thing. So if this doesn't work on time, then a lot of people would miss out even on the rain season, and the harvest, the final harvest, would be affected. All right. So the policies are there, but then they are not being followed well. Okay. Yes.
Lastly, is it fair to blame the GDP dropping from 5.9% to 4.4% in the last quarter of the year 2017? Is it fair to blame the GDP fall you blaming it on the drought and the electioneering period? Are those the only obstacles that are hindering the GDP?
I would blame it on the planners. Yeah, because we all knew there would be drought, we all knew there would be elections, and because we didn't plan well, we didn't plan ahead of what was coming, then that's where we got into problem and the GDP dipped.
All right. And
Yes.
being the head of a very serious association, where do you see the country's, or not the country's economy, or rather the GDP and inflation rate and consumers finally getting stable prices in this first quarter of the year 2018?
It is difficult because a lot of it, again, depends on the same policies we're talking about and how they are going to be implemented. So for the government, the citizens or the consumers getting fair prices will depend a lot on the push, the pressure that people like us would put on the government to be able to bring down these prices, because it is upon the government. Article 43 of the Constitution speaks about this, that the government should ensure that people get adequate food. Yeah. It's upon the government to do this.
Right.
So we'll put pressure and ensure that the government lowers some of these prices.
And we shall be counting on you to put that pressure. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you very much,
for this pleasant interview. There's so many out there, including ourselves, who do not really understand the fluctuating prices, why electricity bills are up and down, why we're buying maize today for this price. One day it's 90 shillings, the next day it's 140 shillings. But I'm sure we got informed, and we appreciate that. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for keeping it Ebru TV and watching Business Insight. Please do have a lovely afternoon. I'll be seeing you at 9 p.m. for Primetime News. My name is Nina Shabak.